Hi, everybody. Welcome to Now House. I'm Frank Baird, and in today's class, we're going to explore turning obstacles into allies. And specifically today, we'll talk about ways that you can work with apathy and sleepiness in a meditation practice.
So this month we're talking about turning our obstacles, that's obstacles to our mindfulness practices, whatever we decide to do, into allies. And today we're going to be focusing on apathy and sleepiness. And Frank is going to be sharing with us. And I forgot to introduce you, Frank. So, hi, Frank.
Hi, Frank who? Hi. You could say you didn't introduce me because it was a performance of apathy. We'll see how many
Oh,
apathy and sleepy jokes are part of tonight's class.
very apropos.
So yes, this month we're talking about turning obstacles into allies, and this is, I think, especially related to when you're trying a meditation practice, but it's also applicable to other aspects of your life, as you'll see as we talk about these things. Tonight, we're going to talk about apathy and sleepiness and how you can work with them. So, I think of these as challenges. If you're like a lot of people, one of the things that happens is people feel like, I can't meditate because I'm too sleepy, I'm too restless. And we invite you to think of the challenges as the practice. They're not obstacles, they're not really getting in the way of practice. They're the opportunities for practice. Because if you think about what mindfulness and meditation practices are, it's about being with what is. And sometimes you'll hear this phrase, working with them with skillful means. Being skillful in the way that we are relating to the whatever, so that it really isn't an obstacle, it's an opportunity. Now I have to do this. I have to put air quotes around opportunity because if any of you are like in a corporate environment, opportunity is a hideous word that corporations use to sort of say like this hideous, awful thing is an opportunity. But I really do mean here you have this ability to not just have it be like an enemy to you and your practice, but to really do see it as an opportunity. So if you think about challenges, challenges are hopes or expectations that this moment be different than it is. And we talk a lot about the invitation to orienting yourself to at least sequentially getting to a place where you can go, this is how it is right now. This is how it is. And in a meditation practice, we often forget that the journey is the destination, meaning really what we're doing is we're focusing on the process rather than the outcome. So often people take up like a meditation practice because they're hoping it will be peaceful, or they're hoping that it will help like recenter them, or other possible outcomes. And those are all fair enough. Like I think of like that's the thing that motivates me to begin and sometimes endure, hoping for those outcomes. And when you're doing it, the invitation is focus on the doing of it, separate from the outcome, because this might be a bit too broad, but I'll say it. Um, you increase the chances of getting the outcome that you're trying to achieve if you practice in a way where you're working with what you've got, with what is here. So that can seem kind of tricky, right? It's like I'm feeling really antsy, or anxiety is really bothering me, and I'm hoping that I can sit and do a meditation and it will be calming and peaceful. And then when I'm sitting to do my meditation, I'm so not feeling calm or peaceful. Or sometimes people have this experience, which is like, I'm feeling more anxious because anxiety has my total attention now. And so that can feel like the opposite of what I'm trying to do, where I'm trying to get. And a key thing, a skillful thing to do in that instance is to acknowledge that, recognize what's going on, and then make the adjustments you need to make to continue to practice in that moment, in those circumstances. So I may not finish a meditation and feel calm or blissed out. However, when I finish the meditation, I'm going to be a lot more skilled because I would have practiced with challenges, so that increasingly over time, it's possible to have a less difficult time, both in terms of the practice and in terms of getting to the outcome that I want. Here is some, I don't know if you call these definitions, characteristics of apathy or sleepiness. So sleepiness is like a heaviness in the body, a dullness of mind, fatigue, an inability to sustain energy in the effort to practice, dreaminess, like, I think about heaviness as I'm feeling weighed down, and dreaminess is for me kind of like I'm floating around. And I don't have, it feels like I don't have power over or control over these things. The heaviness is happening whether I want it to or not, or the dreaminess is happening whether I want it to or not. Spacing out is another way of both being sleepy and some apathy. I'll mention in a moment. Sleepiness can be like a fuzziness of focus, like I'm trying to remain focused on whatever, either an attention anchor, or I'm trying to stay focused on the effort or my intention and having trouble with it, either because I'm daydreaming or because I'm too tired to sustain or keep track of where my focus is. And then apathy is not caring. Like, I don't care what's going on. Sometimes apathy produces sleepiness. Sometimes, I started to say sleepiness comes from apathy, but that's the same thing from a different sentence structure. But like the not caring often is I'm not paying attention or I'm daydreaming because I don't care about what's going on right here, right now. I think of dreaminess as like if I float away, that could be because of sleepiness. It also could be because I don't really care. I'm not trying very diligently to keep paying attention or to stay engaged with what my practice is here. And so my mind goes wherever it goes, under the influence of whatever is influencing me right now, which could be apathy or sleepiness. So if you start paying mindful attention to the state you're in when this is happening, you can make some adjustments. And so the adjustments are either mental or physical. Some of the mental adjustments you can make are something like this. If, and this is related to sleepiness or to apathy, reinvigorating my sense of direction and purpose, reminding myself of what I intend to be doing. So when I first started a meditation practice, I would sit down for a half an hour and I would meditate for 3 minutes and then nap for the rest of the time. And that was really nourishing, right? It felt good. It felt like when I woke up again, I was better off than before. And that wasn't the practice, and I don't get the benefits of the practice. I get the benefits of a nap. But what I started to do eventually is remember that I wanted to stay awake. That's my biggest challenge in life, is staying awake. So I would reinvigorate my mental attitude by reminding myself of the reason I'm doing this, the purpose of doing this. And then the direction is related to what do you do when you're meditating? So if you're doing a concentration practice, it's bringing attention back to the attention anchor. If you're doing like open awareness, which made it really easy to fall asleep for me, then I'm tracking my attention as it's floating around. So the floating around isn't the problem. The floating around is the practice, except I needed to stay focused, following my attention, being aware of what was going on instead of nodding off and going to sleep or becoming apathetic because it like wasn't interesting enough. Some other mental adjustments you can make. One is you stimulate the mind by widening the focus. So if, for example, excuse me, if, for example, you're doing a concentration practice and you're trying to keep your attention, say, focused on your attention anchor, let's say in this example, focused on breathing, then what can happen is like there's not enough stimuli happening at this moment to keep me engaged. So what I could do is widen the focus of attention. So it's kind of like still leave breathing at the center of my attention, but have a much wider view of attention so that my breathing is happening within a context. So that might be the difference between really focused on feeling breathing and hearing breathing happening. I might broaden my attention so that I'm feeling breathing happening. It's at the center of my focus, and I'm also aware of sounds that are happening. And I'm also aware of, if my eyes are closed, I can open them and see some things happening. The trick is not to widen your focus and then go there, right? Like somebody outside is talking and your attention goes outside and you start listening in on the conversation, right? That's not the goal. What can help though with widening focus is breathing and whatever the and is. Similarly, you can stimulate the mind by narrowing the focus. So when I was talking about like an open awareness practice where really for me, the one way of doing an open awareness is just wide open attention. Let anything be in my field of attention. And I might keep losing track of my attention because again, that's not stimulating enough, or I'm not tracking, I'm not reminding myself to pay attention. That really with this wide focus, I'm daydreaming or spacing out. So then what you could do is narrow the focus of attention so that you can't get lost so easily. One of the benefits of the narrowing of the focus attention is it's easier to tell if my attention moved away from my attention anchor. If it's wide open, it's sort of like if I have a football field's worth of attention, if I move something a couple of inches, I may not notice it because of all the yards in the football field. But if I focus on, say, a foot distance on the football field, if something moves, I'll notice it. Another mental adjustment is accepting as best you can, or I like to say leaning in the direction of acceptance for what's going on. Notice resistance to this moment and focus the attention and effort in the direction of acceptance. One of the things our mind does when something is unpleasant is it tries to get away. So we try to get away both physically, but we also shift our attention. Like attention might go into a story or a thought, because the feeling can be that if my attention is there, I'm not so much here. So if what you notice is, I keep daydreaming, or I keep thinking about dinner, or whatever the thoughts keep grabbing my attention, I might notice if part of what's going on right here, right now, is resistance to this moment. That I'm trying to bring something more pleasant or delightful into this moment, either because it's unpleasant or because I'm experiencing some apathy. I'm not really paying attention. Another mental adjustment you can make is to be more receptive, to activate your engagement with and receptivity to whatever is happening in the moment. Sometimes people will use language like allow. I like the demand of a language like embrace. So if instead of fighting a thing, it's invite it in, welcome it in. This is sort of like acceptance, only it feels a little more I don't know, it has a little more energy to it. Acceptance is not a passive thing, but it feels different than welcoming or embracing. So these are some adjustments, mental adjustments, that can help both with sleepiness and with apathy. Some physical adjustments you can make: you can sit up straighter. One of the things I talk a lot about, how the body gets configured around certain things, like anxiety will configure the body in certain ways. Depression will configure the body in certain ways. Excitement, right? So the body gets configured. And one of the things that happens with sleepiness or apathy is that we tend to slump because our body doesn't need to be not supported. It doesn't, we don't need the energy because there's nothing going on that really requires the energy. So if you notice this is happening, one of the things you can do is adjust your posture. Sit up straighter. It helps with circulation. It helps with breathing. It helps make the mind potentially a little more alert. You can also adjust your posture by standing up. I was surprised to discover that you could do this. I remember the first meditation retreat I went on. So this is where people get together for 3 days or 7 or 10 or more. And the goal is to meditate. So you meditate for a while, then you do like a sitting meditation, then walking meditation, then sitting meditation, then walking meditation, then eating meditation. And I would notice that people would be standing up during the sitting meditation, and I was fascinated by that and thought they were committing crimes. It turns out that's a really good way to stay awake. Like when I stand, I've never fallen asleep while standing. It's possible, but you have to like plan for that. Like don't sleep for 5 days or 6 days. But right, if you're feeling sleepy, two things happen. One is that mental adjustment, which is to remember and remind yourself of the reason you're practicing. And then that can be followed up with this physical adjustment, like standing up. And then you can stand up for the remainder of the meditation, or you can stand up until you feel awake enough, alert enough, engaged enough, and then sit back down. And then if it turns out you were mistaken, you can stand up again. Another thing you can do around adjusting your posture is like float your arms or legs. So like one of the things that will happen, sometimes I'll use this posture as an example. Let's say you're doing a laying down meditation. You're laying on your back. I can't do that because I do not meditate laying on my back. I nap. My body says, you are taking the position for sleeping. But what you can do is, so some people will, I don't think I can do it. I can't demonstrate it, but if you're on your back, you put your elbow on the ground with this part of your arm, your forearm and hand up in the air. That does a couple of things. One is it takes a little bit of energy and attention to hold your arm up. The other is if you zone out, you space out, you nod off, your arm will fall and that'll wake you up. If you are really struggling, you can like just hold your arm up. So if you're sitting, you can hold your arm up, right, so that the elbow isn't on the ground. The arm is totally up. You can become tired doing this, but often if you do this for a while, it gets you awake enough that then when you put your arms down, or your arm, or whatever the body part is, you can put your feet in the air, you can put your knee in the air, that when you go back to your previous posture, you feel a little different. You may not feel different enough, right? The idea here is you make these adjustments, notice the effect. Did it do what I hoped it would do? Did it help me continue to practice? If not, rinse and repeat. Do it again, or try a different strategy. Another physical adjustment is taking deeper breaths. So sometimes what you might do, this can be related to that mental adjustment of narrowing focus. You can tell yourself for the next 3 breaths, I'm going to take long, slow, deliberate breaths. I'm going to follow the breath all the way from the beginning in through the inhalation, the pause, all the way back out to the exhalation. I'm going to do that 3 times. So 2 things happen. One is you've narrowed your focus. You've set this intention for the next 3 breaths. And then the other is you're putting more oxygen into your system, and that helps. Because one of the things that happens, like with sleepiness, is that your breathing slows down. I don't know that this is true, but this is the thought that comes to mind, because your body's going, we don't need that much oxygen. We're powering down. So you take 3 deep, deliberate breaths and then notice what happens. Sometimes you might want to do that again for another 3, or sometimes that might do the trick well enough for this moment. Another physical adjustment you can make is opening your eyes. If you are the kind of person who likes to practice with your eyes closed, open your eyes, let some light in. Light will stimulate the brain. You can also look up. I spent a lot of time in retreats in meditation halls with my eyes open, looking up, because it's harder for me to fall asleep when my eyes are up. You can engage in a mindful activity. What this means is, say, like sleepiness in everyday life, right? One of the things is anytime you engage in an activity mindfully, there's the potential for, I'm going to use the word stimulation. Stimulation really sort of sounds like there's a bar, right? Stimulation is stuff happening that is above the threshold of attention, right? Or it's a doing something at a certain level. But really what you're looking for is to stimulate the mind enough to be able to keep doing what you're doing, like paying attention. My favorite mindful activity is mindful eating. Well, I should say this, depending on what I'm eating. I don't recommend doing mindful eating when the food is awful. Well, actually, you could as a practice, right? To just kind of notice what happens when I'm in the presence of something kind of unpleasant. But I like doing mindful eating around really delightful things to eat. And I've also had the experience of some things that I didn't think were all that delightful, that when I started engaging with them mindfully, they became delightful. Another thing you can do, a physical adjustment, is prepare before you do a practice by doing exercise. Oh, I should say this about engage in mindful activity. So something like Tai Chi or yoga are mindful activities. So they can either be considered or include a meditation part, at least a mindfulness part. And so again, if you're doing yoga or Tai Chi, it's harder to fall asleep because you're in motion. But preparing by exercising before practice, that gets your body energized. That's why a lot of times at the end of yoga practices, they'll do mindfulness practice at the end. Sometimes they'll do what's called the corpse pose, which is where you lay on your back and you meditate for a while, because the body has been invigorated enough that going to sleep, this one doesn't always work for me, because after I do yoga, it's like I'm happy to go to sleep. I think that might have to do with do yoga as a way to prepare for bed. So I may have inadvertently or advertently packaged a particular outcome related to that practice. But you can do things like, some people will do things like a bunch of jumping jacks before they sit and start to meditate. Or a variety of other physical activities, so that they're not feeling sleepy or lethargic when they start. Another way, so I will say this one playfully, but I sort of say everything playfully. There's also the Starbucks meditation, which is you go get something with caffeine in it, drink it, and then wait 15 minutes. Now, there takes some skill in, say, drinking coffee or something with caffeine, because if you drink too much, then the challenge in your meditation will be, I'm feeling really overly energetic and I can't concentrate because I got too much caffeine. And then some people don't like caffeine at all. So playfully, that's one of the things you can do. Have some coffee, have some tea before you begin your practice. So these are some of the ways, some of the adjustments you can make, mental adjustments, physical adjustments. I tend to have the experience of they both happen. Like, like I can have a thought to adjust physically, or I'll adjust physically and then I'll notice there's a thought, right? So the thought can prompt the physical adjustment can prompt the thought. It doesn't matter which direction it goes in, it feels like they're both involved. But keep in mind, even if you forget these details, one of the things I think about, there's this notion in therapy called opposite action. And I really like the notion of opposite action. So the way it works in therapy is if you're struggling with depression or you're struggling with anxiety, for example, anxiety configures the body in a particular way, depression configures the body in a particular way. You may not know how to challenge them. So the invitation is do the opposite of whatever it is they're making you do. So if depression is making you lay around in bed and be really lethargic, the invitation with opposite action is get up. Even if you lay right back down, the idea is this is kind of an act of resistance. Do the opposite of whatever anxiety or depression is making you do, telling you to do, convincing you to do. What I think of here is that if sleepiness or apathy is telling me not to pay attention, it's telling my body to slump, it's telling me to think about ending this meditation early, that if nothing else, consider opposite action. If the thought comes to mind, let's end early, opposite action would be let's not. Or, that's like in your own practice. If you're here, sometimes what will happen is you'll notice some thoughts going like, how long is this going on? How much longer do we have to do this? Opposite action there would be refocus my attention on something else, because the question, how long are we going to do this? Or do we have to keep doing this? Is really an invitation to bounce out of the meditation, because it's the thought comes to mind because it's unpleasant-ish to do what you're doing. So if what you want to continue to do is practice, opposite action would be redirect my attention away from any thoughts, kind of any thoughts, but especially those thoughts that are making it harder to be here and do this. So with that said, let's practice. So lots of different ways to practice. Here we invite you to get comfortable. You can be in stillness or slow, deliberate movement. The benefit of stillness and slowness is that it gives you an opportunity to really observe what's happening. Because so often what's going on in everyday life is we're not noticing. Part of it is we don't have to. Like, I know how to walk, so why would I walk slowly when meditating? But if I walk slowly, I can discover some things. Additionally, in addition to discovering some things, one of the things I can do is it's easier to settle my mind and focus it if I'm doing something slowly. So your preference, you can sit, lie down, you can do slow, deliberate movement. Your eyes can be open or closed. Listen to my voice. I'll be providing some guidance during the practice. Notice what's happening. As best you can, establish and maintain a friendly, gentle attitude toward whatever's happening. right? One of the benefits is you might notice whether you like it or don't like it, whether you experience it as pleasant or unpleasant. That's valuable. That's part of the insight, the self-awareness that can arise from these practices. And as best you can, keep noticing that. Make some adjustments, right? So the idea here is anytime my attention goes away from whatever attention I need to do this practice, bring it back. That would be the adjustment. But do it in a friendly attitude. I used to like yell at myself. I'd get mad because my attention would run away. And then I decided I would start treating my attention like a squirrel and try to coax it back. So one, much more playful and friendly image coming to mind, but also it really, it made it less difficult to shift my attention and bring it back than it did when I was yelling or being mean to myself. And then as always, stop if you need to. You can do this practice anytime, anywhere. There'll be a video on YouTube available of this class. You can come back and do this practice with us asynchronously, but really trust your judgment around that. So with that said, let's practice. So often, the way I like to start a practice is by taking a couple of deep, intentional breaths. This starts to shift the configuration of the body. It can be really interesting to notice how your body gets configured when you're thinking a lot. And if part of what we want to do is not necessarily think so much, then you might take 3 deep, slow, intentional breaths. And you can do that at your own pace right now. And then it's often helpful to bring attention to the body. And notice what state the body is in, like what kind of energy is happening right now. Is it settled, calm, or peaceful? Or is it sleepy or lethargic or energetic? And is it energetic in a focused way or energetic in like a chaotic way? Mind going everywhere. So at first you just notice, what state is my body and mind in right now? And then here's where we start to make another gentle adjustment to what's going on. The adjustment is, if you're feeling sleepy and lethargic, what can you do right now that increases the chances that you can stay awake and stay focused? So that might be something like sitting up straighter, maybe standing up. Might be something like opening your eyes and looking up. Or if the body's feeling really energetic, chaotic energy, then some things you might do is notice places in the body that feel tense or tight and let go of as much of that tension or tightness as you can. So these adjustments are in relation to the process. They're adjustments related to how can I stay engaged with the practice. That's different than content, right? Am I thinking a thought that's happy or unhappy, pleasant or unpleasant? The adjustment here is it doesn't matter. Can you shift attention so that it's not focused on the thinking that's happening? Can you bring attention to the body state and make some adjustments that would help your body, help your mind engage in practice? Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. You might feel the body breathing, and you might feel how the body breathes on its own. You don't have to make it breathe, and for this practice, you don't have to breathe in a particular way. Bring attention to breathing and just feel it happening. You can use breathing as an attention anchor, a place to let attention rest during the practice, or a place to restart the effort at paying attention or focusing attention. So by bringing attention to breathing, anytime attention wanders off or gets pulled away, when you notice, gently bring attention back to breathing. Back to just feeling breathing happening. One of the benefits of an attention anchor is that in terms of practice, you intend for your attention to be in this location. And that can make it less difficult to notice when it got away, when it was pulled away, when it ran away, when it drifted away. And so the practice is notice that attention left. In terms of practice, that's not a problem. It's inevitable. Attention will go somewhere. And when you notice, gently bring it back to breathing. One of the things you may have noticed is that in meditations that have narration or guidance. Sometimes that's entertaining or valuable in just reminding you, what am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing? So in this meditation, I'm going to provide less guidance. And what might happen, this may or may not happen for you, but what can easily happen in silence is that the mind will wander off. Or you might get sleepy. So I'm going to be quiet for an extended period of time now and invite you to notice what happens. And make whatever adjustment you need to make whenever you need to make it to continue to pay attention. Bringing attention back to breathing, and then whenever it goes somewhere else, bringing it back to breathing. And any other adjustment that's necessary to continue to engage in the practice. So I'll be quiet for a while now. Remembering to pay attention. Notice where attention is now, and make any adjustments you might need or want to make that might help you stay focused on this practice for a little while longer. noticing where attention is now. You might notice the state your body is in right now, the energy level. Is it similar to when you started, or is it different? And then notice what happens when I tell you. We'll meditate for 1 more minute. Notice if that thought has an effect on your energy, your ability to continue practicing. And to conclude our practice for tonight, if you'd like, you might express some appreciation or gratitude to yourself for engaging in this practice, for making this effort. However satisfying or unsatisfying it was, appreciating that you practiced.
We have a couple of comments thanking you. People are finding this very refreshing and rejuvenating, which is wonderful, which is exactly the opposite of sleepy and apathetic.
It's also, I'm also appreciating that, sometimes people feel like that the invitation to practice by like opposite action is work. But what can happen here is the difference between, like the outcome can be different. If I put in this little bit of work, then I get the outcome of whatever's there after a meditation practice, which is different than, for me, whatever's there after a nap. I have to say I really, 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 really like naps. And my experience has been the effort to stay awake, which is an ongoing challenge for me, is really beneficial, that I get something more. Like if you think about napping, I go to sleep and I recharge. But if you practice mindfulness and you practice a meditation, you've got skills that help you be different. So that's really nice. It's not just rejuvenating, it's like moving forward.
One of the things, so for me, I'm one of those people, there's a sleepiness that I can't get past, where all that can be done is sleep. And there's the sleepiness that's trying to block practice, like trying to distract me from practicing. And the way I distinguish between the two is I'll actually think of something exciting, something I'm looking forward to. And if my mind immediately gloms onto it and is like, "Oh yeah, we're going to do this and this and this and that and that." I know that it's the sleepiness that's trying to distract me from practice. Whereas if I bring up the thing that I'm looking forward to and I can still sense the sluggishness of like, "Oh yeah, that'll be great when that happens. That'll be great." But there's the sluggishness. I know I need to get some sleep. So being able to formulate tests like that can help you evaluate what is really here right now. Is the mind being wily and using sleep, or is it sincerely a need for rest?
I really like that because that is such a valuable way of making the distinction and knowing which action, like there are a variety of actions I could take,
Mhm.
which action is the most skillful right now.